Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to the face in the card making space. And a really simple card. We're going to keep today just simple. Using just die cuts, a combination of a newer wafer die set and then a couple oldie but goodie favorites of mine, along with a little bit of ink blending on craft cardstock. Something I just love. It just gives it a more subtle look. This one is for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge, which I'm the host of. As I always do, I will have a link to that challenge in my blog post, which is always linked directly below the video. So you guys can check it out if you are interested, want to play along. It's just for fun, gets everybody thinking outside the box with color combos, which is why I love it. And along with everything else, I'll have links to the supplies I used in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That's what helps pay the bills, keep the channel going. And yeah, let's get into making this card. So I'm using the Dancing Floral Vine wafer die set. And I didn't show the other wafer die in this set, but basically it's two wafer dies. One cuts like the base, which I'll show once I'm done my ink blending. And then there's another die that die cuts all these little pieces that you layer on top. So these leaves, the little flowers, the centers, everything. It's all on one wafer die. So I ran this through my die cut machine with Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, because that is just one of my faves, especially for craft cardstock. And I'm only showing one. I did this 3 times because I'm going to double this up to do an entire background, and then I needed something for the inside as well. And I took my little die cut pieces and I'm sticking them to one of my grip mats so that I can ink blend on them. And there's something about ink blending on craft cardstock. I've shown this in a ton of videos, whether you use like dye-based inks, oxide inks, whatever. I love it, because the craft cardstock just gives it like a more natural undertone, a more toned down look versus like straight up white cardstock. And I'm using Simon's Pawsitively saturated inks and just my Waffle flower brushes, my 1+ and 0+ little shader brushes to add the ink. And for the leaves, I used cabbage ink. All of this will soften even more and dry back. So especially on the green, because I didn't add a whole lot and it's a light green, it will dry back a fair bit. And then for the terracotta color, that's part of the challenge, I used clay ink first and then terracotta. Very fitting. And for those like 4-petal flowers, I started with the clay using just a little tiny 0+ brush, and then added the terracotta, and then added just the terracotta to those little larger blooms. And then for these little baby blooms, I use sky ink and then night ink. So I just covered them with the sky ink, and then I took another tiny 0+ little brush there and just kind of started in the center and like blended that out with the night ink, which is a navy shade. So did all my blending, repeated the process for the other ones. And then to layer it, it's pretty self-explanatory. The packaging has, how it's supposed to look, but it's also kind of obvious where everything goes. And because you just put the same shape on top of the same shape. So I used a combination of, or I didn't use a combination. I used my little like embellishment wand to pick up these little pieces because, there's several little pieces here. Just put little dabs of glue. I didn't worry about it too much. Wiped off glue on spots because I kept getting ahead of myself and then putting glue where there isn't going to be a die cut. And same thing, I'm going to repeat this process. But I took a little scraps of my Simon Says Stamp like matte gold cardstock. I've talked about this with specialty cardstocks, my metallics, my glitters. I keep every little tiny piece because you never know. It comes in handy. And in this case, I proved myself right because I just ran it through with the die that cuts all the little detail pieces. And I die cut little scraps of that gold cardstock with just the section that die cuts the little centers. So I'm going to add those. You could also like little gems. That would look really cute on this too. Little tiny pearls, those sorts of things. That would look really cute as flower centers. But I just ran it through with the matte gold cardstock and then I adhered those into place, repeated it a couple more times. And then for my sentiment, I'm using just an oldie but goodie favorite that I've used many times. This is the Fancy Thanks wafer die, and I die cut a couple scraps of soft navy cardstock with it to stack this sentiment up, because in the end this card has no white cardstock at all, which for me is kind of nuts. You know, because usually my cardstock bases are white. Like, I use a ton of white cardstock, but this time didn't use any of it. So I stacked up the sentiment with the soft navy, and then the top layer was the matte gold cardstock. So got all of those adhered together, made sure everything was lined up. And then another oldie but goodie favorite that I've used a ton of times is the detail ringlet plate. I forget when this came out, like a couple years ago, at least. Many times. Love it. Just, oh, that detail. It's so perfect. So I die cut soft navy cardstock with that detail ringlet plate. And then I adhered the dancing floral vine. And you can see the way it is sized is basically half an A2 card front. So it just makes sense, in my opinion, to double it up. And then you just flip it around and adhere it. And you've got an entire background with this. And it looks, and it is very delicate. But you saw I only applied just little dabs of glue to the larger areas. I didn't worry about every little tiny piece. Got it adhered. And then I've got this background with all of this detail. And I'm going to add just a little bit of splatter. Not a ton, just a smidge. I'm using my Yasutomo pale gold liquid watercolor. Add a little bit of water to it. Sit, and I've talked about this in other videos, sit and zone out and swirl it with my brush for a bit. Longer than I need to, but I don't know what it is. It's just stupid satisfying. So for the actual splattering, I'm just using this little brush. That's it. I'm not using my big fan brush. I don't want like big blobs or, a ton of splatter like I normally do. I just wanted a little bit. And this dries pretty matte, so it's going to be, again, subtle, but it's there. So I splattered that on the background, let that dry, and then I'm going to adhere my die cut sentiment right across the middle. My original, like, in my head, I was like, oh, because it needs to kind of cover up where they join. It doesn't need to be covered up. Like, just the way this die, like, fits, it just fits together. Anyway, for my card base, I actually did a side folding card base. One, just out of convenience. Simon released a couple, I think like 3 different colors of their like popular colors of pre-cut and scored card bases. So this was just convenient. Because usually I do top folding cards. It's just habit. I don't know. People ask about that quite often, like why we do top folding cards. I don't know. It's habit after all the years. And I like it. I don't do side folding hardly ever, but these were sitting here. It was convenient. So I used the card base. And then a sentiment from one of my favorite sets, the extra talkative stamp set. I stamped that with that night ink on the inside of the card. And then that final die cut that I did, I put the adhesive on it and adhered it partially onto the inside, like let some of that hang off. And then I let the glue dry, and then I flip this over, trim off the excess with my scissors so that the inside has, some of that floral detail, all the good things. And then I'm just going to adhere the card front to the card base. Once I get this in place, I put something heavy on it and let it dry. And that was it. I decided no more bling, no nothing. Like this, the detail, the little bit of splatter. We got the gold cardstock. This is just what worked for me. So, like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below the video. If you want to check out the challenge, it'll be linked in my blog post, which is linked right below the video. All the supplies, etc. That's all linked below as well. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton. I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.